Hello, quarantine land. What's up, Trad? How's everybody doing? Just waiting for Brian to join us. If you are new here, my name is David Castillo. I am the owner and head talent buyer at St. VITUS. Thanks for joining us. Brian should be on shortly. I'm just having a drink out here in my bunker. I hope everybody is cool where they are and staying safe and staying indoors. We're going to be going through a lot of Brian's musical history, things of nature. Thanks, Rick, of it all. Cheers to you, my man. And, just kind of catching up with him and seeing, what he's been up to, his journey up until this point, and, just kind of taking it from there. Conversation between a couple of friends. Want to shout out... Oh, I think this is Brian right now. Nope. Not yet. So I want to shout out my boy Chris Enriquez for just basically coming up with this amazing idea and, just getting us to kind of jump in here and do it. Want to thank my boy Drew Castle for all the design for the flyers. He put this all together. It was really fucking cool. I know he's noticed. Obviously, we want to thank our buddy Ralph, who's been kind of helping us a little bit with the technology. And let's see. Oh, and we have Mr. Brian right here. All right. Add it in. I'm just waiting on Brian. It's connecting up.
Oh,
hey,
shit.
Brian. What's up, dude?
Up?
How you doing?
How are you?
Oh, man.
All right. I'm hanging in.
I'm in like this little makeshift corner I made for myself in my house.
We're both in like weird. We're both in like vaulted ceiling territory right now. It looks like.
Yeah, totally. I got all the essentials here. It's weed
Nice.
and some High West whiskey, and just fucking hunker down here. So Brian, tell me. I wanted to kind of just start with this question: where are you now, and where should have you been today?
I am currently at my house in Seattle, and I think I'm supposed to be somewhere in Spain or Portugal right now. But
yeah, I think it's kind of like this funny question now that everybody kind of knows where everybody is, right? They're fucking at home generally, But obviously most musicians, or a lot of them working musicians like yourself, would be all over the world somewhere performing or doing something. So I think sometimes it's a good way to kind of just root, like, we're here now and this is where we're at. So I want to just kind of start from the beginning. What we're going to do here, guys, is I'm going to just talk to Brian a little bit about like his past, music, fun shit like that. Feel free to add in the comments, maybe any questions you might have or whatever. We're going to try and get to those as well a little bit. These are going to run about an hour. That's what Instagram does. And that's basically it. So let me ask you a question. I mean, I identify you from Seattle and like Washington area because of your musical beginnings in Botch, but is that where you're originally from?
I guess so. I mean, I was a military kid, so I was born in Kansas, lived in Washington State for a while, then lived in DC for a while, and then like most of my childhood was actually in Hawaii.
In Hawaii? Shit, dude, we've known each other for years, and I never knew that shit.
Yeah,
amazing.
From kindergarten through the end of my first year of high school, I was in Hawaii, and then moved to Fort Lewis, which is just south of Tacoma, and then kind of hunkered down there, except for my 5+ years in New York, my little sabbatical out on the East Coast, but otherwise, yeah, it's mainly been Pacific Northwest.
Cool. If you're joining us, we're with Brian Cook from Russian Circles and Botch. and sumac and These Arms Are Snakes and a whole fucking assload of absolutely incredible music. So, an assload of brilliant things. So what was it like growing up in Hawaii? I always feel like people that, it's hard to sort of say, you see Hawaii as like kind of this tourist destination thing, but, I can imagine how intense of a beautiful place it is, everything else like that, all these other people, the people really live there. What do they really kind of experience on a day to day?
I mean, I think it was weird for me a little bit because I'm obviously a white kid, so I was like the haole growing up. Going through the public school system there. Growing up, most of my friends actually were like Japanese or Pacific Islander. So it was a very diverse place to grow up. So that was pretty amazing. And I think I didn't really realize what you're not really aware of your situation, I think, until you hit high school, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's like a whole other world out there, and like I live on a rock.
Yeah. I'm from Long Island, so it really doesn't compare in beauty or scope or its cool rockness than Hawaii does. But what was it like growing up there and attempting to play music and stuff? Because I don't really know anything about bands from the island or anything that much.
Yeah, I mean, it was weird because we still got exposure to the outside world. I kind of started getting into music, like underground music and stuff, slightly ahead of the curve of like the whole like grunge explosion. So, before Nirvana really took off, I was already kind of digging into things like Fugazi and stuff, and I had a chance to see Fugazi at the University of Hawaii. That was my first show back in '91 or so.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of like all of a sudden you kind of realize, oh, it's like people on the mainland have access to all these cool shows and cool concerts, and out on the island you kind of had to do a bit more digging. But I feel like that kind of ignited my love for the hunt. And, I enjoyed the aspect and still enjoy the aspect of, discovering something and having searching it out a little bit.
And 1991, no internet, none of the shit that we're doing right now, kids. Maybe you write a letter or some shit. And was there like any kind of places that were like focal points that you were like, oh, when I was in Hawaii, this record store, this gave me like life. That was like a place that I'd go.
Yeah, there was a couple. There still exists a record store called Hungry Ear.
The Hunger.
Hunger, exactly. Yeah, but that was tiny record store in my hometown. I grew up in Kailua, which now is kind of a popular tourist destination after like the Obamas kind of popularized it as a travel destination. But growing up, it was kind of just a little sleepy beach town. And we had Hungry Air Records, which is like a little tiny mom and pop record store, and they stocked, Black Flag stuff. Anything that was on Discord or SST, they normally had like a little punk section. So I would just kind of blindly pick up whatever it was in.
Yeah, it's like this artwork looks cool, and they're friends with the bands that I like. Like, fuck it, let's go.
I mean, people talk about like record labels being kind of like obsolete in the new era, but for me, growing up, record labels are so important because it was the first sort of step of curation. Where it's like, well, if it's on Discord or Touch and Go or Alternative Tentacles, like it must be good because Ian Mackay or Jello Biafra or Greg Ginn put it out, so like it must be.
They found some value in it. Value in it. Also, shout out to Randall Dunn that says that you look like a sexy Teddy Roosevelt with your beard.
Aww.
That's a beautiful thing to say, man. That's very nice. Thank you, Randall, for that. You brought a smile to my face. It's like really rainy, shitty day.
Yeah. I miss Randall Dunn. You guys are lucky to have him now.
Ah, man, absolutely. A true treasure of production. For you guys who don't know, Randall Dunn makes a lot of your favorite music. He's worked with a ton of incredible bands, and also does a lot of film scores too. You see Mandy or something like that. Randall's
Yeah.
behind the boards, doing a lot with the boy Ben Greenberg from Uniform as well.
And I don't think a lot of people know this, but Randall Dunn is exceptionally skilled at being a front of house guy, especially in Europe, and standing up for his bands when there's decibel limits and things like that.
Oh,
He puts the iron fist down and gets them. So
the Iron
yeah.
Fist of Dunn. Let it
Yeah.
be known, Europe, we are coming.
Yeah.
One day, at a very safe distance, and when we're all okay. But we're coming,
Yes.
and Randall Dunn is iron fisting all of you on the way. So yeah, man. So just getting back, so you're in Hawaii. We had some great record stores. You're doing your thing. You're hungry for this. You see Fugazi. You're like, okay, that has to be that and Nirvana. I feel like so many people, Nirvana is like the turning point of popularizing all of it, right? Like Artie talks about it too. He's just like, after Nirvana, I was playing music, and now all of a sudden I was playing music, and like people started to really be like, oh, you play guitar? Oh, you play music? What's up with that? And it became more of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, there was already something kind of brewing, because I remember seeing the Smells Like Teen Spirit like video debut on 120 Minutes or whatever. Just because I was already like watching that, because it's like, oh, maybe they'll show a Pixies video, or maybe they'll show something by The Cure, or maybe they'll dig deep into the vault and show like the old Husker Du Don't Want to Know If You're Lonely video or something like that. So I feel like there was already kind of the culture was already kind of growing, but that was like the tipping point or something. Once those 4 chords, Smells Like Teen Spirit hit, then it was infectious. So. Yeah.
So after you're done with high school, then is that when you bounced to DC, or is it Washington after that?
No, so let's see. I was in Hawaii from age 5 to 15. We had lived in DC right before that. So
before, okay.
Yeah, so we were like stationed in, I don't know, like just outside of DC in Gaithersburg for a couple of years. So those are like my earliest memories, are kind of like out in DC, and then lived in Hawaii. Finished high school in Tacoma. Then my parents moved back to Hawaii because they got restationed there, and then I just stayed in the Northwest. I was already doing band stuff, and didn't want to interrupt.
Yeah, totally. And that was Botch era, and that's when that started.
Yeah. So I moved to Tacoma in the summer of '92, and then Botch started like about a year later, like October of '93 or something.
Damn. So. All right, cool, man. And how did you link up with those guys just to begin with? How did that all kind of transpire? I love these like stories, like, oh, I saw some dude wearing a shirt that I liked, and before you know it, or whatever.
Yeah, it was kind of like that. I was in a trigonometry class with our guitar player, David Knudsen, and I overheard him.
Botch met in a trigonometry class, everybody.
Yeah, that's where
the math is real. The math is real. No posers on the math.
We were trig, man. We were trig core. I just overheard Dave talking to a mutual friend, being like, "Oh yeah, do you know any bass players? Like, we're starting a band," and like I chimed in, like, "I play bass." So, he like Dave at that point was already playing with our drummer Tim, and they were kind of more into like heavy, kind of like the heavier spectrum of alternative stuff. So they liked Helmet and like like Soundgarden and a bunch of metal stuff. But and I was kind of more of the token punk kid. But Dave was like, "Oh, we want to do a Dead Kennedys cover." So I was like, "All right, sign me up."
So that was the hook. That was the hook. From the
and we never did the cover. It was like a total bait and switch. There was no Dead Kennedys cover.
It was like 3-card Monty, and they're like, "Oh, you got to play all this complicated shit. What's up, bitch?" Yeah, that's pretty amazing. So you guys just kind of met like that, and did Dave have kind of the connection to the rest of the band, or was it more like, hey, me and this other dude are trying to, start something that's fucking crazy, yada yada.
Well, Tim and Dave had already been jamming. I think they'd had a couple practices. They brought me on, and then I don't like they had all grown up together in like the same little like suburban area, like all like Dave Knudsen, Dave Verellen, and Tim Latona were all sort of in the same neighborhood, so they knew each other to some degree. And
so you were like the exotic import.
Yeah, exactly.
Insider.
Yeah, and then Dave Verellen was like, added on. I don't know. We might have even had the same first practice. I don't even remember.
That's fucking wild.
Yeah, and then it stuck. And
that's that. And out of curiosity too, so you at that point you were coming in like, I'm a bass player and I want to play bass. There was no kind of like, oh, I'm gonna like maybe I'll play bass for this band, or you kind of usually play guitar or something like that, or was it like, hey, this is what I am already? Because when you're that young, I feel like a lot of people like, they kind of like do maybe what's asked of them in whatever role they can fit in, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I can do this,
Yeah, no, I was a bass player from the get-go, mainly because I'm left-handed, and growing up in Hawaii, like there was this little tiny music instrument shop called Coconut Grove in my hometown, and it was before Guitar Center. Like, there's no Sam Ash out in Hawaii or anything. And before Reverb and eBay and all that. So it was literally like my only instrument options were whatever was at Coconut Grove. And being left-handed, I was like, there's no left-handed instruments. So I'm like, well, I can't handle guitar, playing guitar opposite-handed. So maybe bass I can do. So it was really just like limited availability and limited means, so I just picked bass, and then like became like dedicated to it. So it's like, I'm gonna learn all these Minutemen songs, anything that was like heavy on the bass became the thing I was like fixated on. So it was like anything with Mike Watt, like No Means No, like Rush eventually, but just anything that was super bass intensive was
interesting. So it's funny how those like little moments, those little decisions that aren't really, super super thought out, or like you said, like, hey, this is what I have, they're the mother of that sort of invention. And then like to you, being dedicated to it, and then all of a sudden, hey guys, I'm a bass player. I landed in Washington. We're gonna start this wild sort of hardcore band. Back when you were, starting with Botch, it's kind of interesting. I feel like nowadays, when people are starting bands or doing things like that, everyone's so connected. Everyone can have kind of this worldwide sort of groupthink. I mean, we're doing it right now. Hi, everyone. And I think that, back, none of the people that I really like followed early on, it was like we wanted to just like play a rockin' show in our town. Like, what were like the early goals of like a band like Botch?
Yeah, I think that was the thing, for us it was, we weren't like crazy aspirations by any means. It was the idea of just even playing a show was so exciting. So it was like, 6 months of trying to figure out how to actually get booked somewhere, but like playing garages or like, friends' parties or whatever. And then, once you started playing shows, it was like a matter of, man, it'd be really cool if like we could put out a 7-inch, or if like people would sing along to our songs, or like having any sort of I don't know, something physical and concrete to kind of show that we were a band. I think that's one of the weird things now in this age where I'm so attached to like the tactile physical things, because for me that was my idea of permanence. It's like, oh, once you have like a demo tape, then it's like something that exists. And
the band is real now. The band is for real.
Yeah, if you have a 7-inch, it's like you can't record over a 7-inch. You can't put Scotch tape over the tabs and dub it. So that was like, oh, like now we're a part of, we're like a footnote in history at some point. So that's
interesting.
Yeah,
and you can see the attention to detail in all of the releases that your bands have had, which I always, I appreciate the aesthetics, obviously, of like every release. And it's just a huge thing to carry your music further, right? To have all of that in mind and just to kind of that full presentation. And I feel like when you receive something like that and you're just like, wow, everything kind of falls in line from like when you look at a record and the mood that it gives you to when you put it on and like everything else that follows. It's a pretty amazing thing. But it's funny how, these things that started without like, okay, like now I feel like younger people, a lot of folks, they'll see like the world, like we can tour and we can do this and that and the other thing. And I feel like back in the day, it was just like, I want to just try and get good and play it for my like 50 shitty friends if I could like maybe make it happen, And that birthed some of the greatest fucking music out, which I think kind of had to do with kind of listening to yourself a little bit, right? Like how many other people were like in your circle, really like feeding you shit, or could you just like look at,
Yeah, I mean, I think I think about that stuff a lot because I feel like, the people that I really looked up to, the people that were like my idols were, again, stuff like Minutemen or Minor Threat and things like that, where it was these dudes who didn't really have any lofty goals with it. Like they weren't doing something that could have any sort of career aspirations. So there's like, we just put out our own records. We like, no one else is going to do it for us, so we'll just do it. There wasn't anything like political about it. It was just, if you wanted to put out a record, you were going to have to do it yourself. And then like sort of the next generation of bands where they kind of adopted that mantle, but like injected it with a bit more politics where it's like, no, like, major labels are bad. Like, DIY is the way to go, like stay in control of, your own art and your own business. And so I kind of felt like we were sort of a part of that wave where it was like DIY partially because no one was going to sign our music, obviously, but also just because that was the way you're supposed to do it, like you're supposed to like handle all your own business. You're supposed to like be resourceful and like, do it all on a limited budget and not make money from it. And, then for whatever reason, that scene kind of blew up. And then now I kind of feel like there's a bit more of this expectation where it's like, well, if I tour for, the US 5 times, I should be able to make a living doing this, right?
Like maybe the scope starts changing as there's you start seeing things and you're like, well, in other kind of musics and stuff like that, when you're getting these sorts of crowds, like what are the economics here? What am I looking at?
Yeah.
There was somebody actually posted something that's like, hey, do you ever get sick of talking about Botch? And I always think about this for people who are very young, who made something with like a massive impression, like you were a pretty young person and you're late teens, early 20s, and going forward when you were making this music and it still resonates today. How does that feel when you're like, wow, I made that, like, it feels like we're talking about like an eon ago. Does that always kind of feel like, I don't even know who that person was who made that shit?
A little bit. I sort of feel like I was talking with my husband about this the other day. I was like, I definitely feel like there's a portion of my life that I am completely sort of divorced from, but I think it's more like high school and before that, where it just feels like that's another lifetime. Mm-hmm. But everything's sort of after, I don't know, like sort of after the Botch years, and really, not to be overly sentimental, but I sort of feel like it's the turning point was meeting my husband. But like from that point on, I feel like that is like my identity now. That's the person who I am, and everything kind of before that is like just seems like remote and kind of distant. But Botch was there for most of that, and we actively had conversations in the early years of, or the early stages of that band, where we were into bands like Earth Crisis and Snapcase and things like that, and we kind of looked at that and we're like, well, these are like the successful bands in like our genre. Like these bands are like blowing up and
all the Victory style kind of things. They were
So,
definitely the shit. What was happening?
and we were fans of that stuff. You know, I still think the Firestorm EP is amazing. I love, you know, like Looking Glass Self. I bought when Record Store Day put it back out. Great record.
Beautiful record, absolutely.
But there was definitely part of us that's like, do we make records that sound like that because there's obviously a market for it, or do we try to do something a little more, I don't know, a little more to our liking and a little less trying to pander to an audience, and just hope that people will understand it someday, you know?
Yeah, I think that, you know, you could draw that line, that spirit through honestly all of your projects, right? Because from there you move to These Arms Are Snakes. And I felt
Yeah,
like that band at that moment, I loved it, but it was a little bit ahead of its time for what was to come. And I was like, man, this shit's fucking great. But I'm like, I'm not exactly sure, like,
yeah,
hardcore diaspora people are ready for this in a way. But I really
yeah,
enjoyed it. And you could tell that Botch to me were always leaders. Like, you know, like I was like, no one who's playing shit like this, you know, like, yes, there were people maybe approximating it, but like it was in its own, like everyone was on the same highway, but in their own lanes trying to get to similar places, I think.
yeah,
And that's what was cool though. You know what I mean? I didn't want to get like the same exact flavor from,
yeah,
you know, all these different bands either, you know, like even when I book bands now, you know, it's cool to be at a show where there's like, you know, to me, some diversity, you know, even within styles, right? If like I book a death metal show, I'd like to maybe have a couple of different shades of this, you know, as
yeah,
opposed to like 10 tech death bands just like ran down my throat, you
yeah,
know.
yeah.
But that being said, These Arms Are Snakes, it was like that. Did you find that, you know, uh, that your projects sometimes they take a little bit of time before they feel like they bloom, and then people kind of are like, oh, I got it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's always kind of been the point, you know, with Botch. You know, when we first started, our big supporters were our friends, you know, people we went to high school with, you know, like the local community of like skaters and snowboarders, and you know, like that whole kind of contingent. But you know, our first few like straight up hardcore shows, like we went over terribly. Like the first I'd say like the first 6 months we tried to like play to like the Seattle hardcore scene, it was just like almost kind of traumatizing because we were just vetted so heavily. Like
Ah, that's
like
amazing.
people like work like you know like dudes like literally like standing like arms crossed like right in front of you glaring at you like you know like yeah just like I'm actively despising you right now. And
Oh man, I love
like
it.
you know it sucked, but like we kind of like we went through it and we're like, well, you know, what are you gonna do? You know, it was just like we were from Tacoma. You know, the Seattle hardcore scene was a different thing, and we were eventually kind of like, well, if Seattle won't have us, we're just gonna make our own thing in Tacoma, and we started booking our own shows, and you know, started getting bands like Strain from Vancouver to come down and play, and I think that kind of made it where a lot of Seattle kids are like, oh
I
shit,
don't
they're
know
just gonna
that
do
band. What were they called? Strain?
yeah, yeah. They might not have been a
Never.
big deal out east. They were huge in
See,
Europe.
that's the thing is like back in the day, I love this regionalism too. You know, I bet you I can name like a couple bands from the island that like I was like, yeah, I went to like 40 of their shows, and you're like, I don't fucking know, you know. But
Yeah.
what was Strain like? Like it just give me like the elevator pitch of Strain.
Okay, let's see. Well, Strain did wind up doing a record on New Age.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah,
wild.
and they did like a record on Bacteria Sour. They did Ron Guardapi from Brotherhood. You know, put out Undertow Records, but he also put out a Strain EP. So they were kind of like in that sort of Undertow,
Mm.
chuggy, like
You know, I love
metallic.
a chug, man. I love a
Yeah.
chug. I
Oh, they were the
really
kings of
fucking
chug.
do. And I love that. That's super
Yeah.
cool. It's just interesting to hear like these sort of like kindred spirit bands from all these different regions that were maybe involved in like just different kinds of hardcore and stuff like that. And, you know, for whatever reason, certain bands go further or not. And like you said, this is a very like passionate amateur kind of scene. It's not like you know, we're like, okay, we're going to be Kiss everyone kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I always like love to learn about stuff like that. And I feel like these conversations always give that to me. You know, when I talk to like Gavin from Burn or Artie, you know, my business partner at St. Vitus, who is in Mind Over Matter and stuff like that, they always have like these great little like side gems, you know, and I'm a little bit younger than them too. And so I pick up that stuff. And to me, I always nerd out about it. And like, I'm going to go see if I can, you know, listen to that or find that or whatever. So I just want to take a quick second to, you know, if you're just joining us now, I'm with Brian Cook from Russian Circles and Sumac, formerly of Botch. And, you know, we're doing this right now. Obviously, we're all locked down. VITUS is closed. So if you like what you're hearing, you know, we have a Venmo for our staff at Saint-Vitus-Bar. If you guys like what you hear and you feel a little bit generous, we're all in the shit right now. That's why Brian's home and I'm home too. And, you know, we're just trying to make the best of this very unprecedented situation. So, speaking of unprecedented situations, These Arms Are Snakes wasn't as kind of long lived. What was the reason that didn't kind of percolate as much, or what was the move to Russian Circles?
Well, you know, I think These Arms Are Snakes, it's kind of tying back into what we were sort of talking about earlier, where, you know, Botch broke up, and pretty much like the day we announced the breakup, which was maybe 4 or 5 months prior to our actual last show and last performance and everything. You know, the day it was announced, Ryan Fredrickson, who had been in Nine Iron Spitfire, who we did a split 7-inch U.S. tour with, came up to me and was like, "Oh yeah, I'm starting a band. It's called These Arms Are Snakes. It's me and Bill Quimby, who had been in an early iteration of Harkonnen, who put out a record on Wreckage."
They played your last show too, right?
They did, yeah.
You want to know how I know that? Real nerdy, but when Vice had this deal with Hydra Head, I was an intern there, and there was this like big bin of like stuff from Hydra Head and shit, and they were like, "You can take whatever you want." I was like, "Yo, that has Botch Show DVD." Boop. It was like that and Hell Songs by Daughters, and I was just taking all the Hydra Head stuff, and they were like, "Nice. Who is this kid?" I'm like,
mine now.
So I watched that show quite a bit, even though I was not there. And a friend of mine bragged to me that he was there. He was like, "Yo, man, have fun." I was at that show. I was like, "All right, cool. Well, I'm a nerd. They got the DVD extras."
Yeah, I think there's a lot of out-of-towners. But, you know, it was like one of those things where it's the same thing where, like, we started that up, and it was like, you know, let's try and do something different. You know, we all kind of grew up in the same sort of, you know, scene that Botch grew up in, but we kind of wanted to, like, have larger boundaries where we could kind of, like, dig into, like, some psychedelic territory, some sort of, like, more angular kind of, like...
Were you also kind of just, like, fed up with hardcore at the time, like, being too, like, attached to that? And I feel like sometimes at a certain point people want to kind of, like, set sail even, like, further.
Yeah.
Musically, well, you know?
Yeah, but only sonically. Like, in terms of, like, the way things operated, like, I've never had an issue with, like, getting jaded on hardcore in that capacity, but we just wanted to, like, not be afraid of melody or, like, having, like, a Led Zeppelin song. So,
yeah.
You know, I think we kind of like crashed headfirst into it because I think there was.
Look at this live review. These Arms are so good at Fluff Fest.
Oh yeah,
an old timer in the fucking building. I need my second drink. Sorry.
Do it. Fluff Fest was you know what, I'll go on a tangent. Fluff Fest was a great show. But my most distinct memory from that show is that it was an outdoor festival in Czech Republic. And somehow there was dog shit on the stage. Steve was just doing like his normal Steve thing, just rolling around on the floor, like getting tangled up in microphones, and then like got up at the end of the night and was just like, "Oh man, there's dog shit all over my shirt." Like I was just rolling around in dog waste apparently.
Wow.
But it was a good show.
Yeah. So Fluff Fest, more like a shit fest.
It was total shit fest.
Wow, and you guys are apparently great. Apparently an untouchable catalog. If you got per one of our commenters here, so if you guys haven't listened to These Arms Are Snakes, I think it is a hidden gem in the Brian Cook catalog. If you're getting into Russian Circles or Sumac right now, go back, listen to Botch, listen to These Arms Are Snakes. It's a fun ride through this man's journey of music, and I think you guys would really appreciate it. And all that stuff's on Spotify or on YouTube or.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, well, fucking find it. I don't know. I'm not your fucking father. Like Christ. So at that point, you guys are just we're setting sail. We want to have more, at least artistic freedom. I feel like the ethos of hardcore and those things. I feel like nobody ever has a beef with that. Sometimes you just get a little bit tired because it's so you come up with that and it becomes so ingrained in you, and then you go and do a lot of other things. But I feel like I tend to keep the perspective, right? We try and keep the perspective. At least I feel like I have in my life and stuff like that. Even though maybe the aesthetics or other things and the artistry might change, that's I really felt that off of you even the first time that I met you, and I sat there and I was watching. You guys loaded in the back of your bass cabinet said Botch. And I was
remember that.
Dog. I was like, yo, that's the fucking dude right there. But it was cool, and I was like, it was so cool to me that you still had it. I was like, there was something about it. I was like, this guy is going to be, he's cut from the same cloth. I feel like we're going to have something to talk about. And like, obviously we do and we're here now. But yeah, and I think that you guys have really kept that perspective all throughout all of your projects. It's never really wavered. I've never been like, ooh, Russian Circles is really going for it, and they like did something like that. Ooh, what dude? They're hitting, they hit up Timbaland, and we're gonna like really do it big today or something,
Well, you say that, but we were supposed to play a show with Korn like in May. I don't know if you saw that announcement.
Oh, really?
We got approached about doing two nights.
That's because they want to be cool. They want that Russian Circles hype, baby. That's what I'm thinking, personally.
Yeah. It was like one of those things that was like so surreal where it wasn't even like argued about. It was just like, do you want to do this System of a Down Korn show in an arena? And everyone's like, yeah. Like, why wouldn't we see what that looks like, But it's more like morbid curiosity than anything else. So.
I think that those things are really interesting too, right? Like, so, as you got into Russian Circles, right? So we're transitioning from These Arms Are Snakes, and then you started Russian Circles in Chicago. Is that the way that happened, or?
So Russian Circles were, we started like 2002, 2003, and then,
I can't believe how old that band is, honestly. Sometimes I kind of forget how long ago I had seen it, and to see it grow into what it is today is amazing.
Yeah. But like that band sort of existed for a couple of years, and then we had like a bunch of mutual friends in Chicago just because our publicist was out there and our booking agent was out there, and then they were just kind of like, oh, you should check out this Russian Circles band. And then we wound up doing a couple shows with them. So, I even wound up like staying at Mike's house when I was helping a friend move cross country. So I was like friends with those dudes, and then they parted ways with Colin. They were already making a record out in Seattle with Matt Bayless, who did the Botch records.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh shit, I'll play on it if you need a bass player. And then all of a sudden, I was like in Russian Circles, and then. Yeah, and it was just kind of like a continuation of the ideal where it's like, oh, these are like good people. Mike and Dave are still some of my like closest friends, and like they're, we all like kind of grew up in different sort of musical spheres, but we all had the punk rock, like the crucial punk rock phase where it's like you discover Fugazi and you discover shellac and things like that, and it's like, oh, like, yeah, this is how you operate as a band. Like,
especially those Chicago kids, they love their, Steve Albini out there. It's pretty amazing, right? Like you could just kind of sense it, and you're like, oh, okay, and like you're traveling in the same circles and stuff like that, and it's kind of like there's an effortlessness to it. And like when you first started playing with them, did you feel like, wow, we have a lot of the same vocabulary just to start working off of?
Well, I mean, I knew those guys beforehand, and we played some shows together. So like, I knew personality-wise we were a match. But the first time we played, I was like, they took me to McDonald's and got like these like jumbo iced coffees from McDonald's. Like every time we practiced, we drank one of these. So it was like the 24-ounce, so like sugar laden like McCafe iced things. And I was just like,
you're a cheap date, Brian.
yeah. I'm like a Seattle guy. It's like, okay, well, this is the coffee you guys drink. But chugged this iced coffee and then like got to practice and it was just like, okay, let's do it. Like,
I mean, how slow do you want me to play?
Yeah, just like super wound up and anxious. So like my first practice, I just remember being extremely jittery, but like really excited just because it was like a different thing, It was like both Botch and These Arms Are Snakes had just been like operating, 10 out of 10 at all times, just like Ryan from These Arms Are Snakes, his amp didn't even have a volume knob. He's playing one of those old Marshall JMPs where it's like the volume knob just only affects like the gain level. So, I was just used to like this certain momentum and volume, and then to like enter into this band where it was about subtlety and nuance and dynamics and like being able to like control a sound and, play with different volumes and gain stages was like a very new realm for me, but it was also really exciting because it was like a new challenge where it was the first time it wasn't like just see how many notes you can cram into a riff. It was like, see how many like different like sounds or like moods you can elicit over the course of like a 7 or 8 minute piece. So that was exciting, and that was like a challenge for me. And I think especially as you get older and you get tired of like breaking your gear all the time or like beating the tar out of yourself on stage every night, it was exciting to be like, oh, this is still like the same spirit and the same kind of tension and payoff and release, but like I don't have to like bruise myself and like like diagnose gear problems every other night doing it. So it was exciting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that there's something about playing with restraint that I'm sure can feel satisfying too. It's like when you give in like so much of yourself in those sorts of ways, showing some restraint is kind of like, oh, like this is really great. It's like if you go out every night and then you stay home one night, you're like, that actually feels kind of good,
Yeah.
So to hold that back a little bit, and also it kind of, I guess, teaches you a lot. I mean, Christ, you have like half a fucking space station back there, and I'm watching you like play keys with your feet and stuff with that crazy Moog pedal that you have, and it feels really so textured and nuanced. And I mean, guys, if you haven't seen Russian Circles, please do yourselves a favor. I've seen Russian Circles in multiple countries, many different venues. Mine, I popped up at a show in London once.
That was awesome.
With Chris, who will be hosting tomorrow night's show of Age of Quarantine with Incendiary. So tune in tomorrow at 8 o'clock. My brother, a fucking amazing dude, and also a big Russian Circles fan. And we popped up in London, and it's just amazing to see that the same band in different settings and how it kind of plays out and how people can kind of respond to a piece of music in different areas. I really fucking love that. I really love, like, I've played music and Primitive Weapons all around, and I got to see Down in Texas, and it was like, holy shit, this is like a fucking college football game. This is amazing. It's so different than seeing it in New York. Seeing you guys in London was just such a cool perspective because it was, in a way, sort of similar to what you guys are delivering and how you were doing it, but just to see, so many different, people just kind of like feeling it almost in the exact same way. It was actually really impressive in that regard. You're like, fuck, all right, cool. This is another 1,500 people over here. English motherfuckers just in the same sort of fashion, and that's really cool. And the show translating just how you guys present it And I feel that takes you somewhere else too. I felt like I was just in this room with you guys, and then I'm like, oh, I'm back. Okay, hey, hey everyone,
Yeah,
and that's the way what that texture and that nuance can do for you, right?
yeah. I mean, that's I think one of the things I have learned over the last 10 years of my adult life is that shows and concerts are, to me, they're a very comforting space. Sometimes you go to a show and it's like, it can be dodgy. Like sometimes you go, like I remember going to see Inmates, the Cleveland hardcore band at the Acheron. That was like my first
Yeah.
show in New York, was seeing Inmates at Acheron.
Shout out to Dano.
Yeah. And, I went because Chris, the guitar player from Keel Hall, who was like an old friend from the Botch days, it's like, oh, like my hardcore band's playing at the Acheron, like you should come down and check out the show. And I had no idea who Inmates were, but I was just like, oh, well, if Chris is involved, then I'm going to go and I'll see what this little show's about. And I get to the Acheron and it's completely sold out, which was like already a kind of a shocker. And then, we get in and it's just like packed full. And I go to the side of the stage of the Acheron just to kind of get out of the mass of people. And as Inmates are going on stage, like someone kind of bumps into their singer and the singer just turns around and just starts choking the guy, just like, and like everyone has to like peel
single arm Darth Vader.
Yeah, just like throttling this guy. And then like they get on stage and like immediately like people start whipping glass bottles. People are throwing fireworks into the crowd, and I'm just like what is this? Like.
And oddly, some people love that. They like want that feeling, right?
Yeah, I mean it's like it was an unusual show for me, for sure. It was just like this heightened sense of danger, but that I hadn't thought of a show since I was probably like 15. But it was exciting. But I mean, overall, like that aside, like I feel like show spaces for me are usually like a very comforting thing because it doesn't matter if it's Malaysia or Romania or Austin, Texas. Like you kind of feel like you're with your people. So it's like this communal thing, and like there's always like regionality, and that's really exciting. And I really like that because I like feeling like every city has its own flavor or its own approach to things. But there's also something really comforting about traveling everywhere and arriving at the club and like knowing you're going to be surrounded by people who have like kind of like a similar worldview, And that's maybe like the one reason I get really territorial about like the underground music scene when I see like weird conservative politics creep into it or anything like that, where I'm like, all right, like I know it's music fans come in all stripes and whatnot, but like I think the one thing we all have to agree on is that we're all like open-minded progressive individuals. We all want like we all want to appreciate diversity and like different viewpoints and like we want to be an inclusive sphere. Like the only like intolerance that should be around is like the intolerance for the intolerant. Like I like
sure.
I like
and that's a kind of a harder thing to negotiate too, right? Like like your band is a very popular band now, and that's always kind of like a hard thing, right? To kind of keep atmosphere as you continue to grow and like this communal vibe, right? Have you felt like a bit of a push and a pull between those things?
We've been really lucky, like we did like 3 big tours with Mastodon a couple of years back, and that was like a big decision for us because we're all big Mastodon fans, and I've known the Mastodon guys just from mutual friends and shows for 20 years at this point. But like they exist on like another level of popularity, and there's always that worry that like as you have a bigger audience, you lose a little bit of that not only that connection to your audience, but you also start like broadening the pool into some I don't know, kind of moron territory, I guess, for lack of a better term, where it's like you might start getting some like knuckleheads that you're not super stoked on.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
so
you're in
there's
moron territory. You're in like weird parking lot moron territory, and you're like, "Fuck, this is what
yeah,
I'm doing."
yeah, you know, just like people that that don't get it. You know, people that don't know the code of shows, that aren't used, like, you know, they go to a concert once a year and they think the appropriate behavior is just going around beating the tar out of people. You know, it's like, I don't want to deal with that shit. You know, like I like the fact that we don't have to police the crowd. Like I don't want to have to like be in Mackay and like telling people it's like, hey, like respect your neighbors and all that stuff. You know, like I don't want.
You don't want your ice cream eating motherfucker moment to happen anytime
Exactly.
soon.
Exactly. You know, so that's why I think we've always had a lot of trepidation about opening for bigger bands and things like that, just because it's like we're happy with where we're at. You know, we have, I'm very happy about our level that we operate at. Our fans are awesome, super like open-minded, and a very diverse demographic. And it's like I just don't want to, I don't
I think
see
to
anything.
me, you guys are like a nice slow cook, you know? Like it's just a beautiful, you know, and it's just kind of continued on. And I think you guys have done a really nice job of just continuing to grow. The quality of the music is just really impressive. I felt like Memorial was really like a moment where things like took this like nice bump up, and it was so organic and like real and cool. And you really had the will of like just people behind you, lots of chugs on that record, which I like, you know, in case, you know, Dave and Mike are listening, you know, if you want to know what I like, all right. You know, and obviously I feel, you know, through, you know, from that moment on too, you guys have just kept operating at these sort of bigger levels, and it's great. And I feel like the shows are just awesome. They're as cinematic and as cool and impactful as, you know, when we've had them. And, you know, for you guys who haven't known, I think Russian Circle's probably played like, what, 3 or 4 times at St. Vitus? Something
Yeah,
like that. And
at
on the
least.
way up, and it was a lot around like the Memorial era, you know,
Yeah.
and on that way up. And I view those as some of my favorite shows that I've seen there, and just seeing that response and stuff, you felt like something was coming up, you know, and that's like always very exciting for me in my job when I'm like booking something, and I'm like, I'm obviously excited as a person, but I just know that the trajectory of things feels so good, and I'm like, okay, cool. And then you guys give us what you give us, and it's like, cool. And now we're talking about the Russian Circles played, you know, like you're like, oh, Russian Circles played here. And it's kind of a long time ago, you know, 8 years ago,
Yeah.
7 years ago, which is
Whoa,
kind of
yeah.
nuts to think
Whoa,
about.
yeah, that's
I was
yeah,
thinking
'cause,
about
yeah,
that today. I was like, holy shit, dude, you know, if St. Vitus is going to be 9 in April, for all of you guys who want to wish us a happy anniversary early. But yeah, we'll be 9 years old in April. So when you look back, you're like, yeah, I'm looking at a video of Russian Circles, like I'm like 2016, you know, or
yeah,
you know, 2015. I was like, oh shit, you know, like right around that era, there was different stuff that was coming, you know, right pre-Memorial and like afterwards.
yeah. Because I mean, I moved to New York. Like, I landed in New York January 5th of 2013, and I feel like we did like the first Vitus show maybe that April. So I think it was like
Mm-hmm.
April of 2013, which I remember because it was Mike's birthday, April 2nd.
And my birthday is April 3rd. So I remember
Yay!
that too. Hey, Aries in the building.
Yeah, so and I don't know. I mean, Vitus was like an important institution for me. I mean, that was like my neighborhood, and that show. You talk about the Botch cabinet, and it's like I always remember that. And it was like that was like my introduction to the Vitus family, and it was always like I don't know. I felt immediately included in the Vitus world, and that was really important to me because I'd always been really intimidated by New York. Like I'd been to New York
That's interesting.
countless times at that point, and I always
Mm-hmm.
felt like New York and LA were kind of the same way, where it was like you were in the big city, you were, lucky to be there, you're lucky to play this venue, like all that shit, and then you come to St. Vitus and it's like, what's up, man? Yeah, like come hang out, like,
Yeah. I feel lucky to have you, man. Anytime.
Yeah,
For real.
I mean, I can't imagine how many shows I went to in that space over the 5 years that I was there.
Yeah.
I felt like I was there at least
You know
like,
what's one show that I remember you going to that I always thought was kind of interesting was, all right, so Young Widows,
yeah,
fabulous band, as we all know.
yes,
They released Easy Pain, and they did two shows. They did one night of Old Wounds and one night of Easy Pain, and they had like no fucking internet previews, none of that shit. They were just like, we're gonna play two shows. We don't care if you film it. We don't give a fuck. And I was like, cool, I'll do the shows. Like, I'm down. I was excited, but I was like, damn, I wonder how the second show is going to sell because nobody's heard Easy Pain, literally 0 out of 0 people, Evan Patterson and like his homies, you know what I mean? So, and then the second night was so packed, but what was so awesome about it though was like everybody wanted to check out what these motherfuckers had. And it was like,
yeah,
Brodsky showed up, you showed up. Like, there were so many musicians in that crowd. And they were just like, we respect and we really like this band. And all these folks were sort of there to see it in like real time. I'm like, when the fuck does that happen? When does that happen anymore?
yeah.
It really was like something very special that sticks out in my mind. And it was just a great night. And I remember us hanging out a bit and just like all these folks. And it was just a really, really beautiful thing. And shout out to Young Widows for doing something like that and giving us that moment.
Yeah, I had a nice long hour-long conversation with Evan Patterson earlier today on the phone because JJ has a new record coming out that he did like entirely on his phone. Like he was on tour and he just made a whole record like on his phone. And then Ben Chisholm from Chelsea Wolf like basically like mixed it and did a bunch of bonus stuff on it. So
damn, that's wild. Well,
yeah,
give it up to Evan for always innovating some way somehow, right?
Yeah, he's like, one of the unsung heroes. It's like, man, it's like,
dude, I was with that motherfucker since Breathe or Resist. What's up? I've been a stan for a long time. Just real quick, we only have a couple minutes left. So, guys, this is Age of Quarantine again. We'll be on Monday through Friday, 8 p.m. Tomorrow we got Incendiary, and Chris is going to be with you guys, with Brendan and Brian, live from Brooklyn. Yeah, Brian, I just want to thank you a lot for, coming on and hanging out with us, man. You're one of my favorites. Does anyone have any questions in the forum? There was a bunch, mostly compliments, honestly. Your facial hair, how great Sumac was at St. Vitus, Randall Dunn showing up. I got like a million heart emojis, all this stuff. So actually, you're just getting complimented left and right. I think that's really what it boils down to. So that's pretty good. Sumac shows ? Well, what are you watching on? Who knows?
Why would you even ask about shows right now? Because no one knows what's going to happen with any shows right now.
Yeah,
it's like I'd love to play some shows right now, but who the fuck knows?
Yeah, for real. Here's one. What are you watching on Netflix right now? Any recommendations?
Right now I'm finishing up The Outsider. So
The Outsider.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm a big Stephen King fan. That was like my my introduction to enjoying reading as a kid was like reading Stephen King books. So I'll anything Stephen King, I'll watch.
Anything Stephen King. I see you're also playing a lot at home, too. Are you just kind of trying to write while you're back at home unexpectedly a little bit? Or is that just more like a therapeutic, like, hey, I'm here?
Yeah, I mean, Russian Circles are already talking about doing an EP of, our last record was like kind of geared more towards playing all the material live. And when we were finished with that, we're like, it's part of what makes a Russian Circles record is that there's, these like moments of payoff and sort of just, Neanderthal riffing, but with these sort of more cinematic and fleshed out like orchestral parts. And because the last one was so heavy on the riffing, we thought, well, we'll just do a whole record that's kind of orchestral. So we're sort of using this time off to try to figure out how that's going to work out and working on material for that and stuff. So
Hey, man, that's amazing. All right, Brian. Well, we're gonna sign off. This has been fucking amazing. Thank you for giving me something to do this evening. And
It's
guys,
always
thank you
great to see
so
a beautiful
much.
face.
It's always
Yes.
great to see your like extra contoured and beautiful face. It's been a total pleasure. Guys, tune in tomorrow night. Incendiary, literally one of the best hard